CTV News at 5 with Hudson Mack.
BC's Auditor General also had some tough words for the provincial government today, calling his reappointment a Mickey Mouse process and a decision that should have been left until after the May election. He also said today that security to protect some of British Columbia's most sensitive information has major flaws. He conducted an audit of the government's criminal justice database known as Justin. The database is used to track criminal cases from arrest through court judgments and holds more than 1 million police investigations. Doyle says the database is full of security holes and could easily be hacked.
Because it contains lots of sensitive information, we expected them to be well protected with multiple layers of security around them and only to be accessed by people who actually needed to read them. But what we found was that for the bulk of RCCs, almost anybody on the system, that's 3,300 people, could go in and have a look, and no one would know they'd done so.
The Auditor General uncovered those security holes a year ago, but held off on publishing that report until today. The Attorney General asked the Auditor General to wait to give her ministry time to respond. Shirley Bond says that her ministry is already taking action to prevent unauthorized access, but Doyle is angry about the process of his appointment. He spoke out about that today, critical of the Liberal-dominated committee that first refused him a second term, then approved a 2-year extension. He says the appointment doesn't have to be filled until October, which is when his term began.
That's correct. All of this is unnecessary because the 6-month rule doesn't start until April. And in fact, I think that it's probably best that this decision around whether or not there is an appointment should be placed to an independent and committee with MLAs sitting on it that are actually going to be sitting here in 6 months' time as legislatures and who do not have a conflict of interest.
John Doyle says the idea that the Auditor General's appointment must be filled by May is an attack on the office and a way to try to get him to leave earlier. He says he won't resign and says his appointment runs until October. He wouldn't say today if he'll accept the 2-year extension and says it isn't really even an offer until the legislature has voted on it next month. Vancouver has recorded its first murder of the year. A 19-year-old man killed when he was surrounded and attacked with a samurai sword. The attack happened in the 6300 block of Elgin Street in East Vancouver late last night. A witness called police and said as many as 10 people were attacking a man in the middle of the street using bats and clubs and the sword. The victim was nearly decapitated and died en route to the hospital. Police say the victim did not have a criminal record, but they do believe it was a targeted attack.
The victim in this is known to police. There are suggestions that there's ties to the drug trade. There are some loose gang connections, but nothing to suggest that he's affiliated with any major gang.
It's Vancouver's first homicide of the year. Shortly after police arrived, they arrested 5 people. They had shown up at the hospital for treatment of a range of injuries, but so far no one has been charged. An emotional day in BC Supreme Court in Victoria as the Crown built its case against the man charged with murdering a Victoria High School student. 15-year-old Justin Wendland was stabbed to death in June 2010 at a bus stop on Douglas Street. 41-year-old Corey Berry is accused of wielding the knife. CTV's Andrew Johnson was in the court today as the Crown played a video of Berry, which was recorded just hours after the murder. He joins us now live. Andrew.
Hudson, this afternoon, the court saw about 2/3 of that video. It was recorded on June 4th, 2010, the day after Wendland was killed. The video shows the accused, Corey Berry, being interviewed by police. He breaks down several times and talks about feeling remorse. He is on trial for second-degree murder. The stabbing happened on June 3rd, 2010 at the bus stop in front of the Times Colonist building on Douglas Street. Witnesses say a man with a dog approached Wendland, first talking to him, then drawing a knife and stabbing him in the chest. In the video presented today, Berry tells a Victoria police investigator he thought he was being followed by people with guns and bats who were trying to kill or kidnap him. He says he went to the Times Colonist building because there were security cameras and he felt safe. The video was stopped and court finished for the day before Berry went into detail about what happened at the bus stop. At the opening of the trial, Crown prosecutors said Berry believed his victim was one of the men stalking him and attacked him in a case of mistaken identity. Friends say Berry has struggled with mental illness, and in the video he tells police he's been on medication since he was a boy. The video of the police interview has not been released to the media. Barry has pleaded not guilty. Justin Wendland's mother, Raj, was in court today, supported by family members. The Crown is expected to wrap up its case against Corey Barry tomorrow, with Barry's defense team calling witnesses beginning next week.
All right, Andrew Johnson reporting. Andrew, thanks. A quadriplegic man was the victim of a hit and run in downtown Victoria, which left him with a broken arm. It happened at about 2 o'clock yesterday around Douglas and Fort Streets. The man was using a marked crosswalk and was in his motorized wheelchair when he was struck by a car that was turning onto Fort. The victim says the car then backed up, drove around him, and took off. People in the area helped the man, but by the time Vic PD arrived at the scene, the witnesses had left, and no one reported the license plate number on the car.
The pedestrian that was struck is a quadriplegic and he's confined to a wheelchair. There's also some speech issues with the individual, so he may have not been able to communicate correctly or efficiently to the people around him.
Police say they do not have a detailed description of the car at this point or the suspect. They do know that the vehicle was blue. If you witnessed the accident or have any information, you're asked to call Victoria Police or Crime Stoppers. And Vic PD, an emergency cruiser at the scene of a pedestrian struck outside the Empress Hotel on the Causeway. It happened just shortly before 5 o'clock. Our cruiser there will bring you more on that as soon as details become available. Emergency crews spent several hours at Thetis Lake last night as they tried to find a lost hiker. RCMP, the View Royal Fire Department, and search and rescue were called to the park at about this time last night. They say a hiker called 911 from her cell phone to report that she was lost. Teams on the ground and on the water combed the area for more than 2 hours. The hiker was eventually located by crews on the fireboat.
They were able to get the lost hiker onto the boat and transport her back to the main beach. She was fine. Again, she was wearing the proper attire for the weather, so didn't need any treatment by paramedics at all. And we're just happy that she's back safe.
RCMP remind you to take extra precautions if you're heading out for a hike, even at Thetis Lake.
You do what she did. Make sure you're dressed well for the conditions, because you never know when something like this is going to happen. And tell somebody that you're going out just in case your phone doesn't have any type of connection at all, or you lose your phone, or you get injured. And you know, if you can, obviously know the trail as best you can. It can get pretty easy to get lost out there.
The woman had 2 dogs with her. Neither of the dogs suffered any injuries. They're all okay. Assembly of First Nations Chief Sean Atleo has returned to work after a highly publicized sick leave at the height of the Idle No More movement. Atleo spoke in Vancouver today and says he'll continue to fight for change using the momentum of the Idle No More protests. Earlier this month, Atleo was harshly criticized for not meeting the terms set out by Aboriginal advocates and other chiefs when he met with the Prime Minister. Shortly after that, he took what he called a doctor-ordered sick leave, saying he was exhausted and needed to rest. Atleo says there are differing opinions and that all First Nations must remain united on the need for change.
We have to be very clear that we have made real progress in recent weeks, that the attention that has been brought on the issues that First Nations face have now, what we've been seeking for so long, begun to pierce the consciousness of this country.
Aboriginal issues have been high on the nation's political agenda since Attawapiskat Chief Teresa Spence began her hunger strike December 11th, sparking demonstrations across the country. She ended her fast today after more than a month. A rescue flight is now on its way to the spot where a Canadian plane went missing in Antarctica, but it had to turn around because of more bad weather today. Rescue crews in New Zealand had hoped that the weather would lift enough to give the spotters a first look at the site where the Canadians' Twin Otter went down, but the clouds were still too low and too thick. Crews say they'll try to set up a forward base closer to the crash site. Resuming the search tomorrow, people who know the pilot of the aircraft say if anyone could survive, it is him. The plane was owned by Ken Boric Air of Calgary. Tragedy near Toronto today. A 9-year-old boy was killed when he was shot in the head. Police got a call to a townhouse complex in Brampton, Ontario, northwest of Toronto, early this morning. When they got there, they found the young victim inside with a gunshot wound to the head. The boy died later in hospital. Police say the shots were fired from outside the house. The bullet that hit the boy came through a window. 4 people have been taken into custody, but no one has been charged. Air India bomb maker Inderjit Singh Rayat may have reached the end of his nearly 3 decades of court battles stemming from the 1985 Air India bombings. Canada's highest court has refused to hear the appeal of the former Duncan Marine Mechanic's perjury conviction for giving false testimony. at the 2003 trial of 2 other men accused of masterminding the deadly attacks. Opening arguments heard today at a high-profile rape and murder trial in India. 5 men who are accused in the fatal gang rape of a young woman on a New Delhi bus arrived this morning at a special fast-track court. Weeks of protest followed the attack last month. Rape cases are notoriously mishandled in the Indian court system, but the mass demonstrations and the international attention on this case prompted the government to set up a special court to deal swiftly with this and crimes against women. If convicted, the accused face the death penalty. Ottawa said today it'll extend the commitment to fighting Islamic extremists in the African country of Mali. The massive C-17 transport plane that's currently supplying French troops will be deployed until the 15th of next month. The Harper government has been hinting this week at an extension, but wanted a broad consensus before making the call. The extension comes as more French soldiers arrive in Mali's capital to help retake the northern parts of the country from Islamist fighters. And the U.S. military has officially scrapped its ban on women serving in combat. The groundbreaking policy change overturns a 1994 rule that banned women in the U.S. Army from being assigned to small ground combat units. This opens hundreds of thousands of frontline fighting positions. Now, some of Victoria's top cops stepped away from the beat today to be honored at Government House with Diamond Jubilee medals. They were part of a group of 21 people who received medals for community service, volunteerism, and protective services. The medal marks Queen Elizabeth's Diamond Jubilee year 2012, the 60th anniversary of her ascension to the throne.
I'm humbled by it because I believe there are so many other people in this province and across the country that are deserving. It's nice to be with some of my colleagues here today to receive the medal and to be recognized.
Well, very, very honored to be recognized with the medal on behalf of the nomination from the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. So it's certainly a highlight of my career of 38 years now.
Saanich Deputy Chief Robert Downey was also awarded a medal today, along with Victoria's Chief of Police, Jamie Graham. A total of 60,000 Canadians will be honored with the commemorative medals. Well, it might be the coldest time of the year, but there's a campaign underway to get you to turn down the heat. Across BC, business organizations and associations are collecting sweaters for charity in partnership with the natural gas supplier Fortis BC. They're also encouraging you to put on a sweater yourself and turn the heat down in your home. The Nanaimo's Downtown Business Association has joined the campaign.
We're trying to get each of our participating merchants, there are 19 of them downtown, to raise, to collect at least 12 of newly or gently used sweaters. We also are accepting, mitts, hats and gloves, just things that can keep people warm as it's particularly chilly at this time of year.
The sweaters will be donated to the Nanaimo Women's and Men's Resource Centres. Participating businesses are also collecting sweaters starting Saturday, and they'll be turning down their heat from February 2nd to the 9th. To see a list of all businesses involved or to learn more, go to dnbia.ca. And an elderly woman is being treated in the hospital for serious injuries after she was struck by a car outside the Empress Hotel late this afternoon. Police say the 73-year-old woman was in a marked crosswalk on the causeway when she was struck. Vic PD's traffic analyst team is investigating. Police expect the causeway outside the hotel to be closed for the next couple of hours. Vic PD says it's still too soon to determine exactly how it happened.